Wait until you hear this. A Roman soldier on duty actually ate better than almost every free civilian in the empire. And not just a little bit better, measurably, historically, and scientifically better. While Rome's poor barely survived on grain handouts and street scraps, the army guy got a daily ration mapped out to roughly 3,400 calories. Wheat, lard, cheese, vinegar, salt, and olive oil were handed out by the government every single day. If you're enjoying this so far, smash that like button. Before we go further, when you picture a Roman soldier, what comes to mind? Drop that image in the comments right now, because by the end of this video, you will not recognize what you wrote. The Roman warrior was nothing like the guys the movies show you. He was something films simply could not capture. A professional. The most perfectly built human weapon the ancient world ever produced. And that engineering started long before he touched a sword. Now this is where it gets interesting. Polybius, writing in the 2nd century BC, wrote down the military diet with the exactness of a supply boss. His records show a biological assembly line meant to build physical strength at scale. The wheat ration alone was 830 grams a day. Not a guess. It is a proven military standard, checked against multiple historical dig sites, including the Vindolanda tablets found at Hadrian's Wall in northern England. That food was not a perk. It was a strict design for survival. Fact 2. But here is the crazy part. The men eating that diet had already survived something most recruits failed. The Roman army rejected more men than it accepted. Minimum height rules, eye tests, dental checks, and the medical exam that Vegetius, writing in the 4th century AD, called harder than the test for Roman citizenship itself. The guys who passed were not soldiers yet. They were raw material. What Rome did to them next is what movies never showed you, and that is exactly where it gets worse. The training after selection was not just getting ready for war, it was training the body to survive war. Roman recruits marched 29 kilometers a day, 3 times a week in full armor, carrying a pack weighing between 25 and 40 kilograms. The army called this the full march. Modern historians who try to copy it with today's soldiers report injury rates over 60% in the first week. Fact 3. You won't believe what happens next because the weight they carried was not random. Every item in the soldier's bag had a purpose calculated by military engineers. The digging tools alone weighed over 6 kilograms. Every night, after marching 29 kilometers, the legionary was forced to dig a military camp from the ground up. Walls, ditches, gates, and watchposts built from nothing, every single night, in enemy territory. Julius Caesar documented this during the Gallic Wars. The enemy, he wrote, was often more afraid of the Roman camp than the Roman army inside it. Fact 4. But the training least discussed is not the marching. The Roman army trained with wooden weapons twice the weight of the real ones. Every new recruit spent months striking a wooden post called the palace with a wooden sword and shield purposely made heavier than anything he would carry in battle. The logic was documented by Vegetius. When the real weapon finally replaced the heavy practice tool, it felt light. The soldier fought faster, he tired later, he killed more efficiently. Rome didn't actually train its soldiers to be brave. It trained their bodies to be living machines. But here is the crazy part nobody talks about. What did these human machines have to do to each other? Decimation. If a Roman unit ran away without orders, showed fear, or turned against their leader, the punishment wasn't jail. It wasn't a fine. It wasn't getting fired. The unit was split into groups of 10. Every group drew straws. One guy in every 10 was beaten to death by the other 9. His own friends killed him, using bare hands and wooden weapons. This brutal fact is recorded in many old texts, including Livy, Polybius, and the records of Marcus Licinius Crassus. Crassus actually used decimation on his own troops after losing to Spartacus in 71 BC. In a single afternoon, he had 500 men killed right in front of the remaining army. Fact 6. And the soldiers forced to carry out the killing faced terrible punishments if they hesitated. Decimation wasn't just about killing, it was about completely destroying the friendships inside a unit, making sure the fear of each other became stronger than fear of the enemy. Rome figured out a dark secret that modern military psychology only proved in the 20th century. Soldiers don't fight for their country. They fight for the buddies standing right next to them. Decimation ruined that friendship on purpose and swapped it for something colder: total obedience through terror. If you're enjoying this so far, smash that like button and hit subscribe with the bell so you don't miss the next one. Now this is where it gets interesting, because the official story usually stops right there. The real version does not. The way a Roman soldier got paid was set up so that staying alive meant following every rule. A Roman soldier in the 1st century AD made 225 silver denarii a year. That sounds like a real salary, but it wasn't. Out of that money, Rome took back the cost of his food, his armour, his weapons, and his mandatory burial club membership. What was left over was sometimes less than 100 denarii. The army held on to that money and only gave it back if he survived 25 years and left with an honourable discharge. Fact 7. Those 25 years are super important because a Roman soldier was legally banned from getting married while he served. He could form relationships, he could have kids, but those kids were legally called illegitimate under Roman law until the reign of Septimius Severus in the year 197 AD, when the rule finally changed. For over 200 years, the Roman army created hundreds of thousands of soldiers who built families they couldn't legally claim. But wait until you hear this next detail. Fact 8. The men who survived those 25 years got something the movies always show as simple. They got a piece of land, Roman citizenship for themselves and their kids, and a special document called the Diploma Militaris, a bronze tablet that proved they served their time and confirmed their new legal status. People have found these bronze tablets all over the empire, from Britain all the way to Egypt. Each one is a permanent record of a man who gave Rome 25 years just to win the right to exist legally inside of it. Now, here is what that actually means. The men giving up 25 years of their lives weren't even Roman. For most of the empire's history, the majority of Rome's fighting force was not made of Roman citizens. They were auxiliaries, backup soldiers recruited from conquered provinces and allied territories all over the map. Which one of these harsh Roman rules surprised you the most? Drop it in the comments below. Gauls, Syrians, North Africans, Iberians, Thracians, and Batavians from the modern Netherlands were all brought together. They were organised into units, handed standard Roman gear, taught Roman battle tactics, and shipped off to fight Rome's wars. In exchange for 25 years of brutal service, they finally earned what the men who invaded their homelands already had: Roman citizenship. Historians who study Rome's border armies estimate something wild. By the 2nd century AD, these backup auxiliary units actually outnumbered the citizen legions by roughly 1 to 1. The famous Roman army was hardly Roman at all. It was an empire using the empire to defend the empire. But here's the crazy part. Fact 10, and this is something no Hollywood war movie ever gets right. A Roman soldier stationed at Hadrian's Wall in northern Britain was statistically more likely to be born in Syria or North Africa than in Rome itself. Scientists studying graves along that wall have confirmed soldiers came from across the Mediterranean and beyond, using isotope analysis tests on their skeletal remains. One grave at Auchindoun Fort holds a man who, based on that isotope evidence, spent his childhood in a climate matching sub-Saharan Africa. He died guarding the freezing northern edge of an empire miles from his birthplace, defending the very civilization that conquered his own people. If you love uncovering these hidden pieces of history, hit subscribe and tap the bell so you never miss our next video. Now this is where it gets interesting. What happened next was never supposed to be found. The Roman soldier was never supposed to think. That is not an insult, it was strict policy. The Roman military ran on a rule modern armies still struggle to copy perfectly: the total standardization of human choices. Every movement in a Roman battle line had a specific name. Every name matched a specific horn blast. Every man was drilled to react to that horn without a single thought, hesitation, or personal judgment. The famous tortoise formation, the testudo, demanded every guy in a 27-man unit raise or tilt his shield in a precise direction within 2 seconds of the signal. Not around 2 seconds, exactly 2 seconds. Polybius described seeing Roman squads shift lines amid terrifying battle noise, thick dust, and heavy casualties. Any other army would have completely lost communication. The Roman fighter was not taught to be brave. He was taught to be predictable. Brave men hesitate. Predictable men do not. You won't believe what happens next. The same soldiers who pulled off those machine-like moves were the exact same guys who did something totally different before a fight. In the hours before battle, they practiced rituals Rome officially ignored, but privately encouraged. They sacrificed animals to gods Rome did not recognize. They wore lucky amulets that Roman military laws technically banned. They prayed in languages their commanders could not speak. The Roman army was a giant machine, powered by a faith it officially did not have. And Rome knew. Rome always knew. But wait until you hear this. Rome also knew the deadliest threat to the empire was not the enemies outside the walls. The biggest danger was the legions themselves. Between 27 BC and 285 AD, Rome suffered over 50 major military uprisings or attempted coups. Emperors were killed by their own troops. Emperors were lifted to power by their soldiers, then murdered by different soldiers months later. The year 69 AD was so chaotic, it is called the Year of the Four Emperors: Galba, Otho, Vitellius, and Vespasian. 4 men claimed the throne of the most powerful empire on earth in a single year. Each was lifted to power by different soldiers, and 3 were murdered by the men who swore to protect them. Fact 13. The tool Rome used to control this was not loyalty, it was cash. The donativum was a massive payout made by emperors to soldiers the second they took the throne. Think of it as an instant cash bonus, separate from regular pay, handed straight to the men with weapons. It was basically a giant bribe to not get killed. When Claudius became emperor in 41 AD after Caligula's murder, his first move wasn't a grand speech to the Senate. His first act was handing 15,000 sestertii to every Praetorian Guard soldier. The Senate only learned about the new emperor from soldiers who were already paid. That detail changes everything. But here is where it gets crazy. The Praetorian Guard is the unit that movies get completely wrong. They were not the emperor's loyal bodyguards. They were his biggest threat. The guard was set up by Augustus and placed in a permanent camp inside Rome, the Castra Praetoria, built by Tiberius in 23 AD. Picture 9,000 armed soldiers inside the city, even though Roman law strictly banned weapons there. They were above the law, earned 3 times the normal salary, served 16 years instead of 25, and got a massive discharge bonus of 20,000 sestertii. That is 5 times what a regular soldier received. Real quick, if you're enjoying this, hit subscribe and tap the bell so you don't miss the next part. In exchange for these amazing perks, they were expected to protect the emperor. You won't believe what happened next. The history books show they killed him instead. Between 41 AD and 285 AD, the Praetorian Guard directly murdered at least 8 emperors and helped kill several more. They killed Caligula. They elevated Claudius. Later, they murdered Pertinax and literally auctioned the position of emperor to the highest bidder. A senator named Didius Julianus paid 25,000 sestertii per man. He was emperor for 66 days before different soldiers arrived with a better offer. Now this is where it gets interesting. Why did Rome keep a group that repeatedly murdered the men they were supposed to protect? The answer is not stupidity, it is math. A Praetorian Guard that killed emperors was still easier to control than having no guard at all, because without them, the only force capable of protecting the emperor was the frontier legions. Those legions were a 20 to 30-day march from Rome. The Guard killed 8 emperors. The frontier legions killed 20. Rome kept the Guard because the alternative was worse. Fact 16. The soldiers who served in the frontier legions rarely saw Rome. A recruit in Britain in 100 AD would be stationed, trained, and likely die in a zone that never brought him within 1,000 kilometers of the city he defended. But here is the crazy part. Excavations at Roman forts from Scotland to Syria reveal something films never show: comfort. Soldiers built bathhouses. They imported wine, olive oil, and a fish sauce called garum from across the Mediterranean. They maintained shrines to 12 gods. They kept pets, mostly dogs. Several fort excavations have uncovered dog burials with clear evidence of careful, loving interment. A soldier stationed at Vindolanda in northern Britain around the year 100 actually wrote a letter home asking for socks. He asked for underpants. He asked for pepper. That actual letter still exists today, and it is firmly held at the British Museum. A tough Roman soldier standing at the edge of the known world, taking the time to write home about his socks. The silence around this simple fact is louder than the fact itself. But here is where it gets really interesting. What those soldiers built at the frontier changed the surrounding lands forever. The Roman military did not just fight, it built things. The roads, aqueducts, and forts constructed by Roman legions across Europe, North Africa, and the Middle East represent one of the largest engineering projects in human history before the Industrial Revolution. Legionaries were trained in construction alongside their combat drills. A Roman soldier was fully expected to build a fortified camp, pave a road, operate a siege weapon, and fight in tight formation. The exact same man, all of these skills, ready to be used at the same time. The road network built by this Roman military engineering connected well over 400,000 kilometers of paved roads across the empire. For comparison, the entire United States interstate highway system covers only about 77,000 kilometers. And you won't believe this, but some of those Roman roads are still being used today. Not just as historical monuments, but as functional roads. In Britain, several modern highways follow the exact same path laid down by Roman legionaries 2,000 years ago. The soldiers who built them are dust, the roads carry cars, and that is usually where historians stop reading. We do not stop there, because the soldiers who built those roads also destroyed things that history rarely records. Before we dive into this dark truth, hit subscribe and tap the bell so you don't miss the next one. Now, let's look at the Roman military conquest of Britain, Gaul, and the Iberian Peninsula. It caused massive population displacement on a scale that modern historians have only recently started to measure. Julius Caesar's own account of the Gallic Wars records that over 1 million Gauls were killed and another 1 million were sold into slavery during his campaigns between 58 and 50 BC. Those are Caesar's exact numbers, written by his own hand in a document he distributed around Rome as a celebration. Fact 19. The Roman soldier was not asked if he agreed with the mission. He was not asked if the people he was pushing out deserved it. He was given a signal, a formation, and a target. What happened next was documented with the same cold precision as their ration records and road measurements. But wait until you hear what the other side said. Writing in the late 1st century AD, Tacitus preserved a speech by a British chieftain named Calgacus, delivered before the Battle of Mons Graupius in Scotland. Calgacus said this: "They create desolation, and they call it peace." Whether or not Calgacus said those exact words, Tacitus chose to preserve them. A Roman historian saving the words of a man describing what Roman soldiers did. What the records show is not what the film showed you. I still owe you the answer from earlier. It is coming, and it reframes everything after this. Earlier in this video, the question was left open. Why did Rome build an institution like the Praetorian Guard, knowing what it would become? The answer is in the last full generation of the Western Roman army. By the late 4th century AD, the Roman military had transformed so completely from its republican origins that the legions Caesar commanded would not have recognized what they became. The standard Roman soldier by 380 AD was very often a barbarian fighting under a Roman contract. These men were Goths, Franks, Vandals, or Huns. Sometimes they fought under Roman officers, but mostly they followed their own tribal leaders. Instead of getting the traditional bronze diploma and silver coins, they were paid with land inside Roman borders. The mighty army that built the empire was slowly, and then suddenly, replaced by the very people Rome had spent centuries trying to keep out. In 410 AD, the city of Rome was sacked by the Visigoths. Their leader, Alaric, had actually served as a Roman military commander before this. He knew their walls, he knew their gates perfectly. He knew exactly which units would stand their ground and which ones would run away, because he had commanded Roman soldiers himself. Fact 20. The man who shattered the invincibility of Rome was a former Roman officer. Now, I still owe you that answer from earlier, and you won't believe how this actually ends. Fact 21. The final recorded action of a Roman legion in the Western Empire was not a glorious battle. It was an administrative letter. In 476 AD, after the last Western Roman emperor was removed, a unit of soldiers stationed in northern Italy sent a formal letter to the new Gothic rulers. They did not ask for a rescue. They did not ask for new orders or a reason to keep fighting. They just asked for their back pay.
For their money.
These men were likely a mix of Roman citizens and barbarian contractors who had served their time and expected to be paid for the job they did. The new Gothic government did not respond. We have no idea if those men ever got their money. All we know is that they asked. After 700 years of continuous military service, the very last soldiers of Rome's Western army sent a simple payroll request into the dead silence of a fallen empire, and got absolutely no answer. Here is the crazy part about everything we just covered. You just heard 21 facts about the Roman soldier that movies replaced with something cleaner, simpler, and much less honest. These were men who were picked out like equipment, fed like livestock, and trained until their bodies were just weapons. They were paid wages that kept them trapped by the system for 25 years. These were the guys who built roads we still use today, guarded walls at the edge of the world, and wrote home asking for warm socks. They killed when told, were killed by the system they served, and at the end just asked for what they were owed. Rome never built an army. It built a massive machine that ran on human beings. And like any machine, it kept running until the parts finally gave out. Which of these facts surprised you the most? Drop it in the comments below and share this with a history buff. The true story of these soldiers is brutal, but their sacrifices built the very foundation of the world we live in today.